I'm Blayne Smith, and this is Overkill Reviews. I'm back, we're back. Hey, personal update. I got 2 arms. I can only do this with it. I can't get any higher than this, but hey, I'm already pretty high to begin with. Normal YouTube stuff, hey, get subscribed, comment, like, whatever. And hey, the Patreon campaign, we're 4/5 of the way to 2 videos a week. Head on over there and give us some cash if you can, because the second video is cool underground indie stuff. And, you know, that's what we're passionate about. Let's hear some music. It's called Werwolf. It's not spelt wrong. It's a Nazi thing. Of course, we're reviewing MARDUK Viktoria, out today on Century Media. If you got a problem with it, you voted for it in the Patreon poll, so it's on you. Disclaimer, I do have to mention, they do dance around with some Nazi shit. So, I'm gonna make some Nazi jokes. I'm gonna make some jokes about Nazis. So if that's not your jam, I definitely understand that, and you might bow out of this one. That's cool. Let's get into it. Long-standing black metalers from Sweden, MARDUK, formed in 1990 and have put out an impressive 13 albums prior to Viktoria. It was 1999's Panzer Division MARDUK that sort of carved out the modern image for the band, which was sort of a Ross and Rachel will they won't they thing with Nazism. They've actually successfully managed to play with the imagery enough to stimulate our endless fascination with World War II without crossing over into danger territory outside of occasionally maybe a lost tour date. On Viktoria, founding guitarist Morgan is joined by long-running bassist producer Devo, vocalist Mortis, and Frederick Wittigs, who joined MARDUK for the last album, returns on drums. So, what are the good parts about the record? Well, it's a MARDUK record, so the good parts are the fast parts. The standout track on the album is easily The Last Fallen. It pretty much sums up everything MARDUK does well. It's fast, intense, and totally frantic. Mortis sounds like a maniac, and I particularly love the screaming along with the break, and then when Frederick kicks back in on drums, it really makes it all the more intense, and I just want to shout along with it. You were complaining there weren't enough clips, so hey, clip. Speaking of Frederick, who you might remember from my Chaoteon review, where I also praised him, he is easily hands above everything else on the album. He's the standout, he's amazing, he's phenomenal, he continues his great work. Can't say enough good about him. There's a reason a lot of black metal bands kind of get away with using a drum machine instead of a human being, but Frederick manages to sit in a perfect level between human and robot. He's sitting at like about a bishop level, where he's still got that machine-like precision, but there's no fear that he's gonna try and murder me by jamming a magazine down my throat. Narva on the album is a great example of this. His blast beats transition really well to some slower, neck-breaking, head-banging parts that are gonna be awesome live. You're gonna love them. You're gonna have a banger on the next day for sure. The Devil song on the album has a really great old-school black metal feel. The guitar has a nice kind of haunting vibe to it, and Devo, on production, still nailing it out of the park. They still don't need to go outside a house. He's still creating a perfect atmosphere throughout an album. Thumbs up for that. It also comes in at that pace that's very specifically MARDUK. It's just a touch faster than most other black metal bands, and it really doesn't give you a chance to relax. But I've kind of danced around it for a little bit, so I need to go back to the single that you heard at the start, Werwolf. It's not good. It's a weird vibe of a kind of punky feel with some kids singing over the chorus, and it just comes off kind of hokey. Is it just me, or do the kids sound like they're phoning it in? Where did you find these kids? Kids, do a better job. Also, it comes in at 2 minutes, so I think I can technically qualify this as an intro track and continue to complain about weak intro tracks starting off albums in 2018. Werwolf isn't the only track that is tonally off the mark. The title track Victoria has a weird, slower part that has a almost circusy feel to it to me, and while the circus is obviously equally as horrifying as World War II, it's a different kind of horrifying that doesn't really mesh with the rest. And that's a word that kept coming up when I was talking about this album. Slow, which is strange for a MARDUK album, and it's really what trips the whole thing up. They're at their best when they're blitzkrieging across Europe on the tracks I mentioned earlier, but on this album, MARDUK also made the unwise decision of trying to push through Russia in the winter. Tiger Eye and Silent Night are dragging crawls, and while Frederick does his part to add as much as he can to the war machine, there's not really anything else interesting going on these tracks, and men are dropping like flies. Even a track like June 44, which is fast, still feels a step slower than normal MARDUK speed, which kind of ultimately just makes it a little forgettable on the album. The peculiar counterpoint to the slow tracks is that the album itself is very short, clocking in at 33 minutes. So while MARDUK in the past has gotten away with putting out a 30-minute album, that was Panzer Division MARDUK, and it was just a non-stop blast beat, so 30 minutes was pretty much all you could take. On here, 33 minutes doesn't give slow tracks enough time to build any sort of sense of atmosphere, so all it does is cause those tracks to make a short album go by even faster. This is George Costanza in horizontal stripes. Very short. Thus, we come to the verdict, and I really am torn because I hate giving this album a crummy review. There are songs on this album that I love. It's exactly what's great about MARDUK. It's crazy fast, intense music that just makes you want to punch a thing. And when they do that, they're at their best. And again, Wittigs is such a good addition to this band. Even the songs I don't like, I like him on them. Ugh, it's frustrating. So you might say, well, Blayne, you like all this stuff, so why don't you just skip those 2 slow misfires and enjoy what's on there? Well, if you skip those 2 slow misfires, it's a 24-minute album, and that barely even qualifies as a punk album. You have to work hard to make money, people tell me. And I really just, there's not enough meat on this bone for me to say, hey, go out and buy 24 minutes of music unless you're anything but a MARDUK completionist. What I can say is if you missed MARDUK's last album, Frontschwein, and you want some black metal, go out and buy that. It really just feels like this album is the leftovers from that album. Or if for some reason you missed Wataine's album earlier in this year, another great black metal album. You've got some choices. I do really hate to do this, but for an album that has about 25 minutes of enjoyment on it, I gotta give it a 2.5 skulls that are maybe Nazis, I'm not sure. So of this week's shoutouts, numero uno in my heart, Chemist, metal bands. It's put out Desolation. They're an awesome, awesome doom band. It's their 3rd album, and they haven't made a misstep yet. So check that out. On the other side of the pond, I guess if you're worried about all this evil in the MARDUK review and you're worried about being doomed to hell, you could redeem yourself by listening to Impending Doom, the Sin and Doom Volume 2. It's Christian metalcore to cure what ails you. And for some reason, 9 Inch Nails put out Bad Witch. Trent Reznor, he's buff, he's mad at millennials, and he's still here. Well, that's the review, so here's the sign off. Give me some comments. I know I haven't been in the comments lately because I couldn't type, but I got 2 arms again, so I can talk to you. So subscribe, comment, and Patreon, cash, please. This has been Overkill Reviews. Blayne Smith, signing off.